Killed for his bravery, the police officer who swapped himself for a hostage dies after a deadly siege. Russia retaliates. British diplomats expelled amid worsening relations with the Kremlin. And the reluctant president, Donald Trump, signs a $1 trillion spending bill, but vows never again.
This is SBS World News with Lilin Chin.
Good evening. A police officer who swapped places with a hostage has died after a terror attack at a supermarket in France. Police shot dead the gunman who pledged allegiance to IS. He killed 4 people and injured 16 in southern France. The 25-year-old man mounted 3 separate attacks, beginning in the city of Carcassonne, before driving to the nearby small town of Trèbes, where he took people hostage.
The rush to respond to France's latest attack. Special forces swarm the normally sleepy town of Trèbes, closing in on a supermarket after a gunman burst in shouting allegiance to Islamic State. Customers frantically looking for places to hide.
Voilà, donc à partir de là, j'ai pris mon épouse avec ma belle-sœur et des clients qui étaient à proximité et on est allé se mettre à l'abri. Donc je les ai mis dans un frigo de boucherie et fermé de l'intérieur. Moi je suis ressorti et je suis allé en direction du gaz. J'ai appelé la gendarmerie et donc à la gendarmerie je leur ai dit ce qui se passait, le signalement de l'individu avec ce qu'il avait dans les mains.
The gunman, Moroccan-born Redouane Lakdim, known to police mostly for petty drug dealing, apparently demanding the release of this man, Salah Abdeslam, a key suspect in the 2015 Paris attacks, currently in jail. Lakdim lived in the city of Carcassonne, where he hijacked a car, killing a passenger with a bullet to the head and wounding the driver, then shooting at a group of police officers returning from a jog, wounding one, barely missing his heart, before heading to Trèbes, once inside the supermarket taking several people hostage, shooting 2 dead. This officer, Arnaud Beltram, is being hailed a hero for swapping himself for a female hostage, secretly leaving out his mobile phone with an open line, enabling police to listen in. Upon hearing firing, special forces stormed the building, killing the gunman, the officer later dying from gunshot wounds.
He saved lives and is an honour to his profession and his country.
Police have now raided the gunman's flat, taking 1 person into custody. Authorities say Lakdim had been under surveillance for links to a radical movement, but insists there were no warning signs he would act. The admission again setting off security questions in a country under a state of emergency for 2 years until November. And once again dimming its lights and silently remembering the victims. Christine Carney, SBS World News.
US President Donald Trump has capped off a tumultuous week at the White House by threatening to veto a bill funding the US government. While the budget bill did eventually get signed, the president says nobody's more disappointed with it than him. Ongoing uncertainty over a trade war rocked Wall Street for a second day. All the indices had big falls, ending the worst week since January 2016. Thousands of protesters have clashed with police on the streets of Barcelona after Spain's Supreme Court decision to prosecute 13 Catalan separatist leaders. They're being charged with rebellion for their alleged role in last year's failed independence bid. 5 of the politicians have been jailed pending their trials, including the latest candidate for regional president, Jordi Turull. The court's decision means a second leadership vote for Turull as the region's next president will not go ahead. Former US President Barack Obama has wrapped up his quick visit to Australia. 200 guests were invited to hear him speak at the Art Gallery of New South Wales last night. Those inside described his address as thought-provoking and inspirational. In Sydney for less than 24 hours, he's now off to Japan. Coming up next, March for Gun Control. Washington, D.C. prepares for one of the biggest protests in the capital's history. Shortly, boating tragedy. A 13-year-old girl drowns when a boat overturns. And later, apology to a First Lady. A model says sorry for her alleged affair with the president.
For SBS News anywhere, anytime, download the app or go to sbsnews.com.au.
Hundreds of protesters in Australia have stood in solidarity with American students, urging the US government to implement tougher gun laws. It was the first of the March for Our Lives rallies being held around the world, spearheaded by survivors of last month's Florida school shooting. Police are treating the deaths of a woman and a man whose bodies washed up on an island north of Brisbane as suspicious. The pair, believed to be in their 30s or 40s, was discovered by a member of the public on the northern tip of Bribie Island on Saturday morning. Their injured bodies were found near a jet ski. Police are conducting examinations to determine what caused the injuries. They've asked for members of the public to help identify the bodies. A man and two children have died in a house fire north of Brisbane. The Kingaroy home was engulfed in flames when emergency services arrived at the scene. A woman and another child were taken to hospital. The fire is being treated as suspicious. A crime scene has been established. A 13-year-old girl has drowned in a boating accident on the New South Wales south coast. 3 men and 3 children were in the 6-metre vessel when it overturned while attempting to cross the Maruya River Bar. The men and 2 other 13-year-old children were rescued and taken to hospital. The girl's body was found in the upturned boat. Only 5 out of 150 short-finned pilot whales stranded on a beach in Western Australia have been rescued. Vets and more than 100 volunteers have been trying to free the whales at Hamelin Bay, south of Perth, since Thursday. The 5 whales were moved to deeper water, but they are being closely monitored by conservation experts who warn that whales often come back into shore after mass strandings. Victoria's second-largest city has celebrated the reopening of its historic mosque, gutted by a deliberately lit fire almost 2 years ago. The centre of worship for Geelong's Muslim population has been rebuilt in the bluestone shell of an old uniting church. Remote communities in far north Queensland are bracing for the arrival of severe tropical cyclone Nora. Currently a Category 3 cyclone, Nora will make landfall south of Weipa tomorrow. Wind gusts of up to 195 kilometres can be expected. Environmental, Indigenous and farming groups have rallied in opposition to the federal government's policies on mining and climate change. Thousands of people turned out in a bid to declare coal seam gas-free communities. The dairy farming industry is set for a bumper year, according to analysts at SBS World. But how are small farmers feeling about their future? Here's SBS's finance editor and small business secrets presenter, Ricardo Gonzalez.
The Fairley family has been farming in Picton, about 100 kilometres southwest of Sydney, for more than 150 years. The property has farmed beef cattle, vegetables and even timber, but more recently it is a boutique dairy farm. Drought conditions are currently proving to be a challenge though. They're trucking in water and losing $3,000 a week, but by taking control of the supply chain with an on-site bottling plant, the family's been able to soften the blow.
We don't sell a bottle of milk, we sell the story. The fact that we're 7 generations, the fact that we're Australian owned, the fact we come from the Sydney Basin, so there's no carding.
We'll also speak to one of the Fairley's customers on small business secrets. Plus, we meet two Indigenous brothers who are changing outcomes for young people with their Dubbo nursery. All that and plenty more on Small Business Secrets this Sunday at 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. on SBS, then anytime on SBS On Demand.
Coming up next, hugs in space, a warm welcome aboard the International Space Station. Also a new era for the Socceroos, but it's off to a disastrous start. It's time now for sports with Craig Foster and Craig Sports. A very good evening to you.
Thank you, Lillian. Good evening to you. The Socceroos have suffered an embarrassing capitulation to Norway in their first match under new coach Bert van Marwijk. The Dutchman's experimental style fell flat as the hosts ran rampant against a stagnant Socceroos defence. Ben Lewis has the details from Oslo.
Craig, they'd only had a couple of full training sessions under the new manager before this match, so no one was expecting any miracles from the Socceroos, but...
Thanks, Ben. To the A-League now, where ladder leaders Sydney FC are heading for victory against the Central Coast Mariners. Milos Ninkovic's header separated the sides in the first half. Midway through the second half, Sydney retains the lead. Cricket Australia has lodged a formal complaint after several players were subjected to taunts on day 2 of the third test against South Africa. The problems overshadowed an excellent day's cricket that saw Australia's tail wag strongly, led by Nathan Lyon, to move just 66 runs shy of the host's first innings total. And a reminder, Game 4 of the NBL Grand Final Series can be seen on SBS tomorrow. Can the 36ers keep the series alive? Tune in from 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time to find out. Live, free and in HD. Champion racehorse Winx has moved 1 win adrift of Black Caviar's 25-race winning sequence at Rosehill Racecourse today. Winx had to work hard to overhaul Happy Clapper and Kementari for her 17th Group 1 victory for a new flat race world record. While in the Golden Slipper, Esty Jarb led from start to finish to win the richest 2-year-old race in the world. Lewis Hamilton has taken his 5th successive pole in qualifying for tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix. Hamilton hit an all-time lap record ahead of Kimi Raikkonen and Sebastian Vettel. Australian Daniel Ricciardo finished with the 5th quickest time, but must contend with a 3-place grid penalty issued yesterday during practice. And finally in sport, in the countdown to this year's FIFA World Cup, we continue our look at the tournament's most memorable moments. In the 2006 final between France and Italy, Zinedine Zidane showed his brilliance from the penalty spot after a foul on Florent Malouda. Zidane kept his cool with a nerveless Panenka penalty to put France into the lead. Italy came back to win it in a penalty shootout. And a reminder, you can catch the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia live, free and in HD on SBS when play gets underway in June. Lillian, that's Today in Sport.
Thank you, Craig. The weather is coming up, and how much is that puppy in the window? A famous department store joins the adoption movement. To the forecast, severe tropical cyclone Nora continues to advance in the Gulf of Carpentaria and will make landfall sometime tomorrow. A low-pressure system through the southeast is producing a cloud band with thunderstorms for Victoria and Tasmania. In the major centres, overcast in Perth, showers for Adelaide and Melbourne, and rain on the way for Sydney, Canberra and Hobart. Looking further afield, rain in Samoa and showers in Auckland. In Southeast Asia, rain for Bangkok, thunderstorms expected in Kuala Lumpur and overcast for Jakarta. Further north, clear for Beijing, cloudy in Seoul, Shanghai and Taipei, and partly overcast for Hong Kong and Manila. Heading west, sun in store for Beirut, Jerusalem and New Delhi, and partly overcast in Dubai. To Europe, showers in Madrid, patchy cloud for Stockholm, Berlin and Budapest, and rain for Istanbul. In Africa, sunny in Cairo, rain in Algiers and Casablanca, thunderstorms for Lagos and showers in Nairobi. In South America, rain for Caracas, Bogota and La Paz, thunderstorms for Asunción. And for North America, rain in Vancouver, clear for Denver, Chicago and Toronto, and snow in Washington, D.C. Puppies has taken over Saks Fifth Avenue's famed window in celebration of National Puppy Day. Onlookers stopped to take thing, Saks or nowhere. The department store partnered with an animal league to encourage the adoption of puppies from shelters. Recapping our top stories now, a heroic police officer has died in hospital after swapping places with a hostage during a terror attack at a supermarket in France. He was one of 4 people killed by a gunman. 16 people were injured. British diplomats have been expelled from Moscow as the diplomatic row escalates between Russia and the UK over the poisoning of an ex-spy. The European Union is also recalling its ambassador and has promised an unprecedented diplomatic response. And Washington, D.C. is preparing for one of the biggest protests in the capital's history. Students and activists will take part in the March for Our Lives rally calling for tougher gun laws. And that's the world this Saturday. We'll have news updates throughout the evening. The news website has all the latest stories, and get news anywhere, anytime with the SBS News app. Good evening.